I shouldn't be here. That's the first thought that crosses my mind as I float in the dark, suspended between the void of space and the vast gray expanse of the moon below me. I'm not a real astronaut, at least not in the heroic sense people imagine. I wasn't trained for years for this. I don't have a family waiting for my return, or a team blindly trusting in my abilities. I'm just the sixth choice. The last spare part after 5 other men, better men, fell like dominoes before the inexplicable. 2 fell ill for no apparent reason. 2 vanished completely during preliminary missions in lunar orbit, and 1 simply died in his sleep, his mind found in an irreversible vegetative state. And now here I am, Ezra Thorne, the man nobody wanted, the pawn sent to face something no one understands. I can't stop thinking about it as the ship gently sways, its solar panels capturing distorted fragments of sunlight reflected off the moon's surface. My heart hammers against my chest as if it wants to escape, and each beat echoes in my ears with deafening clarity. I never should have accepted this. It was pride that brought me here, or maybe the memory of my mother always saying, "You can do anything, Ezra, as long as you believe." Would she be proud now? Or disappointed that I'm throwing my life away for nothing more than misplaced scientific curiosity? The mission was doomed from the start. During the brief months of preparation, there was no time for more. I was given vague details about the monolith found on the moon. A massive structure, black as obsidian, with proportions too perfect to be natural. No one knew what it was, but everyone agreed it needed to be studied. Of course, they didn't mention the lost reports, the truncated recordings from the first expeditions, or the rumors that those who got too close to the object began to change. Mentally, physically. Changes no one could explain. When I asked about it, I got evasive answers. Paranoia, they said. Stress, they assured me. But see, when you're the 6th choice, you know exactly what it means. The others tried, and failed. The landing was rough. So rough that for a moment I thought I'd die before even leaving the capsule. The module shook violently as it touched the lunar surface, and for a few terrifying seconds, I thought we'd tip over and explode in a silent flash. But it didn't happen. When I finally opened the hatch and looked outside, I felt a sensation I still can't quite describe. It was as if the silence itself out there was alive, breathing in slow, heavy cycles. The lunar horizon seemed infinite, a flat, dusty expanse swallowing any sound or movement. And there it was, the monolith, rising against the star-speckled black sky. It seemed larger than anything human had a right to be. Taller than any skyscraper on Earth, its surface was so smooth and perfectly black that it seemed to absorb the light around it. It was impossible not to stare at it, even though doing so made my stomach churn. When I finally approached it, guided by automatic instructions from the orbital base above, I began to feel something strange. It wasn't fear, not entirely. It was something deeper, something crawling under my skin like invisible insects. Each step toward the monolith felt harder than the last, as if the ground beneath me was resisting my advance. When I got close, enough to touch it, I hesitated. My gloves trembled inside the pressurized suit, and I could swear I heard something. A low, almost imperceptible sound, vibrating directly through my helmet. It wasn't a hum, it wasn't an echo. It was something that shouldn't exist, something that made my mind spiral into disjointed loops. I touched the monolith. It was a mistake. The moment my fingers pressed against its surface, I felt a wave of energy surge through my body, like an electric shock amplified 1,000 times. My vision flickered, and for an instant, I saw things that couldn't possibly be there. Shadows moving quickly at the edges of my field of vision. Humanoid shapes with elongated heads and impossibly thin limbs. Whispers filled my ears. Words, in languages I'd never heard before but somehow understood. "You don't belong," they said. "You shouldn't be here." I tried to pull back, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Then, just as I thought I was losing my sanity completely, everything stopped. The silence returned, thick and oppressive. I looked again at the monolith, and there it was, the carved figure. A grotesque creature, with elongated eyes and sinuous tentacles emanating from its head. It seemed to be watching me, assessing me, I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, but it was useless. I knew something had changed, something inside me. I returned to the ship trembling, though I tried to pretend everything was fine. I reported to the orbital base that initial contact had been made, omitting any mention of the whispers or visions. But as I sat in the cramped cabin, staring at the monitor showing external images of the monolith, I couldn't shake the growing feeling that I had brought something back, with me, something that shouldn't have been awakened. And now, alone in this metallic capsule floating above the lunar surface, I realized that maybe I'll never leave. Maybe I'm destined to stay here, like the others before me. Not because I failed, but because the monolith decided I should remain. Why? I don't know. But one thing is certain. Whatever is inside that thing is alive. And it's watching me. The silence in the capsule is deafening, pressing against my ears like a physical weight. I try to focus on the instruments in front of me, their blinking lights and steady hum meant to reassure me that I'm still grounded in reality. But nothing feels real anymore. My hands tremble as I input data into the console, each keystroke echoing unnaturally loud in the confined space. The image of the monolith is burned into my mind, its perfect geometry and the grotesque figure carved into its surface haunting every thought. I can't shake the feeling that it's watching me, even now, through the cameras mounted outside. The ship. I tell myself it's just paranoia. That's what they told the others, wasn't it? Paranoia, stress, words designed to dismiss the inexplicable. But I know better now. I felt it. The cold, invasive presence that radiates from the monolith. It doesn't just exist, it knows, and whatever it knows, it shares in fragments, whispers that burrow into your mind and take root like parasites. I hear them again now, faint but unmistakable, threading through the static in my headset. You are not worthy, they hiss. You are too small. My stomach churns, and I grip the edge of the console to steady myself. The nausea isn't new. It's been building since I touched the monolith. But this time it's worse. It's as if my body is rejecting something, pushing back against an infection I didn't realize I had contracted. My vision blurs for a moment, and when it clears, I see something reflected in the glass of the monitor. A shadow, tall and impossibly thin, standing just behind me. I spin around, heart pounding, but there's nothing there. Just the empty cabin, the dull glow of indicator lights, and the oppressive darkness beyond the windows. Get it together, Ezra, I mutter under my breath, though the words sound hollow even to me. This isn't how it's supposed to go. I'm supposed to gather data, analyze samples, and return home with answers, or at least questions we can work with. Instead, I'm unraveling, piece by piece, my mind fraying at the edges like old fabric. Every instinct screams at me to leave, to fire up the engines and get as far away from this place as possible. But I can't. Not yet. If I abandon the mission, now, everything will have been for nothing. Worse, they'll send someone else. Someone who might not survive long enough to warn anyone about what's really out here. I force myself to review the scans I took during my approach to the monolith. The readings are wrong. They don't match any known material or energy signature. The organic matter detected inside the structure pulses irregularly, almost like a heartbeat, but slower, sluggish, ancient. As I stare at the data, patterns begin to emerge, symbols, shapes that seem to shift and rearrange themselves before my eyes. At first, I think it's a glitch in the system, but then I realize it's intentional. The monolith is communicating, not with words, not with images, but with something deeper, something primal. It's rewriting my perception, layer by layer, until I'm no longer sure what's real and what's imagined. The hours blur together, each one heavier than the last. Sleep is impossible. Every time I close my eyes, I see it. The figure carved into the monolith, its elongated limbs twisting and writhing as if alive. Its eyes bore into mine, unblinking, unyielding. Sometimes, I swear, I can feel its gaze following me, even when I'm awake. It's in the corners of the room, in the flicker of the overhead lights, in the faint vibration of the ship's hull. I start talking to myself, just to drown out the silence. It's just stress, I say aloud, over and over again. It's just stress. But deep down, I know it's not. By the third day, things escalate. The equipment begins to malfunction, in ways that defy explanation. Sensors give erratic readings. Power fluctuations cause lights to dim and flicker, and the temperature inside the capsule drops suddenly, despite the heaters running at full capacity. I bundle myself in thermal blankets, shivering uncontrollably. But the cold isn't just physical. It seeps into my bones, into my soul. And then there are the dreams. Vivid, suffocating nightmares that feel more real than waking life. In these dreams, I'm standing in front of the monolith again, but this time, it's different. The surface ripples like liquid, and when I reach out to touch it, my hand sinks into the darkness. Something grabs me, pulls me in, and I'm falling, tumbling through an endless void filled with stars that scream and planets that bleed. When I wake up, drenched in sweat and gasping for air, I find scratches on my arms, deep, angry marks that weren't there before. Panic sets in. I check the medical kit, searching for anything that might explain what's happening to me. My pulse is racing, my skin pale and clammy. I inject myself with a sedative, hoping it will calm me down, but the effects wear off almost immediately. The whispers return, louder this time, overlapping and discordant. They speak in tongues I don't understand, but their meaning is clear. Leave, run, die. I try to call the orbital base, desperate for help, but the transmission cuts out mid-sentence. Static fills the line, broken only by a low, rhythmic pulsing that matches the beat of my own heart. Then, a voice, not human, not machine, but something in between, speaks directly into my earpiece. You carry it now, it says, its tone, both soothing and menacing. You cannot escape. That's when I notice the changes. Subtle at first, easy to dismiss as fatigue or stress. My reflection in the monitor looks off. My eyes are darker, sunk deeper into their sockets, and there's a faint sheen of moisture on my skin that wasn't there before. When I touch my face, it feels wrong. Like the surface is stretching, shifting beneath my fingers. I stumble to the mirror in the tiny lavatory and stare at my reflection, my breath catching in my throat. My pupils are elongated, slit-like, and my veins pulse visibly beneath translucent skin. Something is growing inside me, spreading through my bloodstream. Like poison, I collapse onto the floor, clutching my head as waves of pain crash over me. Memories flash before my eyes. Fragments of lives I've never lived, places I've never been. Civilizations rise and fall in the span of seconds, their inhabitants worshipping a dark figure etched into stone. I see armies marching across barren landscapes, their banners bearing the same grotesque symbol carved into the monolith. I see cities consumed by fire, oceans boiling away into nothingness, and above it all, the figure watches, unmoving, eternal. When the visions fade, I'm left, trembling, tears streaming down my face. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. Whatever the monolith has done to me, it's not finished. It's using me, shaping me into something else, something it needs. And the worst part? I can feel it wanting more. The line between dreams and reality has dissolved completely. I no longer know which is worse. The nightmares that haunt my sleep, or the waking hallucinations that follow me like shadows. Every movement feels heavy, as if gravity itself has doubled in strength, pulling me closer to the surface of this desolate moon. My body aches with a pain that isn't just physical, it's existential, a weight pressing down on my soul. The air inside the capsule tastes stale, metallic, and every breath feels like inhaling shards of glass. I try to focus on routine tasks, checking oxygen levels, monitoring radiation exposure, anything to distract myself from the creeping dread. But nothing works. Even the simplest actions require monumental effort, as though my limbs are no longer fully under my control. When I look at my hands, they tremble uncontrollably, fingers twitching in ways that seem alien, unnatural. Sometimes, when I'm not paying attention, I catch glimpses of something beneath my skin. dark veins pulsating with an otherworldly light, spreading outward like roots digging deeper into earth. It's horrifying. But what terrifies me more is how familiar it feels. Like it belongs there. Like it always has. The whispers have become constant now, a cacophony of voices overlapping and competing for dominance in my mind. They speak in languages I don't understand, yet their meaning seeps into me, bypassing logic and reason. Fragments of knowledge flood my consciousness. Ancient rituals, forgotten civilizations, cosmic truths that make my brain ache with their sheer magnitude. But none of it makes sense. Or maybe it does, and I'm simply too small, too insignificant to comprehend. Either way, it's tearing me apart. One night, or what passes for night here, I wake up to find myself standing outside the capsule. How I got there, I don't remember. My suit is sealed, life support functioning, but my heart pounds wildly as I realize I have no memory of leaving the safety of the ship. The ground beneath my boots is cold, unyielding, and the monolith looms ahead of me, larger than ever before. Its surface shimmers faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if alive. As I approach, the figure carved into its side seems to shift, its elongated limbs twisting slightly, its tentacles writhing like serpents awakened from slumber. For a moment I think it's moving. Then I blink, and it's still again. But something else isn't. Something is crawling across the lunar surface toward me. At first, I think it's a trick of the light, a distortion caused by the visor of my helmet. But then, I see them, shapes, humanoid but wrong, their forms flickering in and out of existence like static on a broken screen. They move silently, gliding rather than walking, their heads tilted unnaturally to one side as if listening to some sound only they can hear. Their eyes, too large, too black, stare directly at me, piercing through the layers of fabric and metal separating us. I want to run, to scream, to do anything except stand frozen in place as they close the distance between us. But I can't. My legs refuse to obey, locked in place by a force stronger than fear. When they reach me, they don't attack. Instead, they surround me, forming a loose circle that traps me within their gaze. One of them steps forward, its movements jerky and disjointed, and raises a hand, not quite human, not quite anything else, and points at the monolith. A single word echoes in my mind, loud and clear despite the absence of sound. Awaken. Then they're gone, vanishing into thin air as quickly as they appeared. I collapse to my knees, gasping for air, my helmet fogging up from rapid breathing. My muscles burn, and my vision swims, but I force myself to crawl back to the capsule. Once inside, I seal the hatch behind me and lock it manually, even though I know it won't keep whatever those things were out. Nothing will. Over the next few days, the hallucinations intensify. Shadows stretch unnaturally long across the cabin walls, shifting and contorting into shapes that shouldn't exist. Faces appear in the reflective surfaces of monitors and windows, their features distorted, grotesque. Sometimes, I catch glimpses of myself in these reflections, and each time, I look less like Ezra Thorne, and more like something else. My skin darkens, becoming almost translucent, revealing the intricate network of glowing veins beneath. My eyes grow wider, rounder, until they seem to take up half my face, and my mouth. It stretches impossibly wide, filled with jagged teeth that weren't there before. I try to record everything, hoping that someone, somewhere, will find my logs and piece together what happened here. But the words come out jumbled, fragmented, as if my thoughts are being rewritten before they hit the page. Sentences trail off, mid-thought, replaced by symbols and glyphs that pulse faintly on the screen. Symbols that match the patterns I saw in the monolith's data. Patterns that mean something. Something vast. Something incomprehensible. And then there are the visions. Vivid, overwhelming flashes of insight that leave me reeling. I see Earth. From orbit, its oceans boiling away, continents crumbling into dust. I see humanity reduced to ash, scattered across barren wastelands. And above it all, the monolith stands tall, untouched, eternal. It's not just a structure. It's a beacon, a prison, a tomb. And I am its key. The realization hits me like a meteor strike, obliterating any semblance of hope I had left. Whatever the monolith contains, it's not dormant anymore. It's awake, and it's using me to communicate, to spread its influence beyond the confines of this desolate rock. Every transmission I send, every scan I perform, carries a fragment of its essence back to Earth, back to the people who sent me here, oblivious to the catastrophe they've unleashed. I stop sleeping altogether, afraid of what I'll see if I close my eyes. Food loses its taste. Water feels like acid sliding down my throat. My body continues to change, growing thinner, paler, until I barely recognize myself. Yet strangely, I feel stronger, faster, more aware. It's as if the thing inside me is rewriting my biology, optimizing me for some purpose I can't begin to fathom. On the 7th day, the equipment shuts down completely. No power, no communication, no life support, just silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Panic surges through me as I scramble to restart the systems, but nothing works. The temperature plummets, and frost begins to form on the walls of the capsule. My breath comes in shallow gasps, condensation freezing instantly against the visor of my helmet. I know I don't have much time. That's when I hear it. A sound so low and resonant it vibrates through my entire body. It's coming from outside, from the monolith. Against every instinct screaming at me to stay put, I grab a flashlight and step out onto the lunar surface. The beam cuts through the darkness, illuminating the towering structure ahead of me. Its surface ripples again, liquid-like, and this time I see it clearly. Cracks forming along its edges, spreading outward like spiderwebs. Light spills from within, cold and blinding, and the whispers return, louder than ever. They aren't just in my ears now. They're inside me, echoing through my bones, drowning out all other thought. As I stare at the monolith, the cracks widen further, splitting. Open with a deafening roar, something emerges, not fully formed, but enough to send waves of terror crashing over me. Tentacles, impossibly long and sinewy, lash out into the void, searching, probing. Eyes bloom across their surfaces, blinking in unison, staring at me, with an intelligence far beyond anything I could comprehend. And then, finally, it speaks. Not with words, but with emotion so raw, so primal, they reduce me to tears. Fear, despair, hunger. Ezra, it says, though the voice doesn't come from outside. It comes from within. You are chosen. Chosen. The word reverberates through me, hollow and final. Chosen for what? To die? To serve? To become? I don't get the chance to ask. The tentacles wrap around me, lifting me off the ground, pulling me closer to the monolith. My suit tears, exposing me to the vacuum of space, but I don't suffocate. Instead, I feel connected to the monolith, to the thing inside it, to everything. And as my consciousness fades, consumed by the infinite darkness, I realize the truth. I was never meant to leave. The darkness consumes me, but it's not empty. It's alive, teeming with movement, sound, and sensations that defy comprehension. I'm no longer Ezra Thorne. I'm something else entirely. A fragment of consciousness adrift in an ocean of ancient knowledge. Memories flood my mind, but they aren't mine. They belong to the monolith, to the thing buried within it. Civilizations rise and fall in flashes, too quick for mortal eyes to process. Stars are born and extinguished like candles snuffed out by an indifferent hand. And through it all, the figure, the grotesque, tentacled deity carved into the monolith's surface, watches, waiting. When I regain some semblance of awareness, I find myself back inside the capsule, or what's left of it. The walls are warped, bent inward as though crushed by an invisible force. My suit lies shredded on the floor, useless now, and my body is unrecognizable. The transformation has accelerated, stripping away any trace of humanity. My skin is translucent, stretched taut over a skeletal frame, revealing the pulsating network of veins beneath. My fingers have elongated into claw-like appendages, tipped with razor-sharp nails that glint faintly in the dim light. But the most horrifying change is my face. Or rather, what used to be my face. My jaw hangs unnaturally wide, filled with rows of jagged teeth that shift and rearrange themselves whenever I try to speak. My eyes, once brown and human, are now black voids, reflecting nothing but the endless expanse of space. I stagger to the window, drawn by an instinct I can't control. Outside, the monolith stands taller than ever, its cracks glowing with an eerie blue light. The lunar surface around it churns, shifting and buckling as if the ground itself is alive. Shadows writhe across the terrain, twisting into shapes that resemble the figures I saw earlier. Humanoid, yet alien, their forms flickering in and out of existence. They gather around the monolith, bowing low as if in worship, their movements synchronized in a macabre dance. And then, without warning, they turn to look at me. Their hollow eyes lock onto mine, and I feel it again. That invasive presence probing my mind, rewriting my thoughts, consuming what little remains of who I was. "You cannot resist," a voice whispers, both inside and outside my head. It's not the same voice from before, not the one that called me chosen. This one is colder, harsher, devoid of emotion. You are part of it now. Part of what? I want to ask, but the words catch in my throat, choking me with their weight. Instead, I clutch at my chest, feeling the thing inside me pulse in rhythm with the monolith. It's growing stronger, spreading through my veins like wildfire, burning away the last vestiges of my humanity. With each beat, I feel more connected to it, to the entity trapped within the sarcophagus of stone and shadow. Its hunger becomes my hunger. Its despair becomes my despair. And its purpose becomes mine. But what is its purpose? That question haunts me as I stumble toward the airlock, driven by a compulsion I don't understand. The answer comes in fragments, disjointed images flashing across my vision like static on a broken screen. I see Earth, a fragile blue marble suspended in the infinite blackness of space. I see cities crumbling, oceans boiling, skies filled with ash, humanity reduced to dust, scattered across barren wastelands. And above it all, the monolith stands tall, untouched, eternal. It's not just a tomb, it's a weapon, a harbinger of annihilation. "No," I whisper, shaking my head violently. "This isn't real. It's not happening." But it is. The visions aren't warnings, they're instructions. The monolith isn't dormant anymore. It's active, awakened by my presence, by my touch. And now, it's using me to carry its influence back to Earth. Every transmission I sent, every scan I performed, it wasn't data. It was a signal, a beacon calling out to whatever lies beyond. Panic surges through me, but it's quickly drowned out by the overwhelming sense of inevitability. There's no escaping this. No running. No hiding. I've become a vessel, a conduit for something far greater and far darker than anything I could have imagined. The thought terrifies me, yet it also fills me with a strange, perverse sense of awe. To be more than human, to transcend the limitations of flesh and mortality, isn't that what we've always sought? Isn't that why we reached for the stars, why we dared to probe the mysteries of the cosmos? But this isn't transcendence. This is destruction. Pure, unrelenting obliteration. I step outside, the frozen lunar surface crunching beneath my feet. My body moves on its own, guided by instincts that aren't mine. The airlock seals behind me with a hiss, cutting off any chance of retreat. Not that it matters. There's nowhere left to go. The monolith looms ahead, its surface rippling like liquid, drawing me closer. The figures surround me again, their forms flickering in and out of existence, their hollow eyes fixed on mine. One of them steps forward, raising a hand. Not quite human, not quite anything else, and points at the monolith. The same word echoes in my mind, louder and clearer than ever before. Awaken. I reach out, my trembling fingers brushing against the cold, smooth surface. For a moment, nothing happens. Then, with a deafening roar, the cracks widen further, splitting open with a blinding flash of light. Tentacles lash out, wrapping around me, pulling me closer. I scream, but the sound is swallowed by the void. My body dissolves, merging with the monolith, becoming one with the entity trapped inside. Its memories flood my mind, overwhelming me with their sheer magnitude. I see civilizations reduced to ash, stars consumed by darkness, entire galaxies collapsing into nothingness, and through it all, the figure watches, unmoving, eternal. As my consciousness fades, consumed by the infinite darkness, I realize the truth. I was never meant to leave. I was never meant to survive. I was chosen to awaken the god, to unleash the apocalypse. The transition is neither quick nor merciful. It's a slow, agonizing dissolution, a dismantling of everything I once was, until nothing remains but the shell of Ezra Thorne. My thoughts fragment, splintering into shards of consciousness that no longer belong to me. Memories of Earth flicker like dying embers. My mother's voice, soft and reassuring. The sterile hum of the NASA facility where I trained. The faces of the 5 men who came before me, their eyes hollowed by fear. But even those fragments are fleeting, consumed by the entity now surging through my veins. It's not just inside me, it is me. Every heartbeat echoes its will, every breath carries its whispers. And with each passing moment, the boundary between us dissolves further. Outside, the lunar surface convulses as if alive. Cracks spiderweb across the gray expanse, glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. The monolith pulses in rhythm with my own body, its surface undulating like liquid shadow. Tentacles writhe from within, stretching outward as though seeking purchase on the barren landscape. The figures, the silent, flickering entities that surrounded me, are gone now, absorbed into the growing tide of darkness. Their purpose has been fulfilled. They were harbingers, messengers sent to ensure my compliance. And now, I am their replacement. I can feel it. The awakening. It's not sudden or explosive. It's gradual, deliberate. Layers of ancient power unfurl like petals blooming in reverse, revealing something vast and incomprehensible. The figure carved into the monolith, the grotesque deity with elongated limbs and writhing tentacles, begins to emerge. Its form solidifies, materializing from the stone itself, until it towers above me, impossibly tall, impossibly alien. Its eyes, black voids filled with galaxies, lock onto mine, and I understand. This is what I've become. A fragment of its essence, a single thread in the tapestry of its existence. But understanding brings no comfort, only terror. Because I'm not just a witness to its resurrection. I'm a participant. Every movement I make feeds its strength. Every thought I think fuels its expansion. The connection between us is absolute, unbreakable. I try to resist, clawing at my skin, tearing at the translucent membrane stretched over my bones, but it's futile. There's no escaping this, no undoing it. Whatever shred of humanity still clings to me is being devoured, consumed by the hunger of something far older than time. And then, silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. For a moment, I think it's over. That the transformation has completed, and I've been fully assimilated into the entity's infinite consciousness. But the silence doesn't last. It's shattered by a sound so low and resonant, it vibrates through the very fabric of reality. A heartbeat. Not mine. Not human. Something deeper, slower, more primal. Each pulse radiates outward, rippling across the lunar surface, distorting the horizon, bending the stars themselves. The moon shakes violently, its crust cracking open, to reveal a core of pure, seething energy. Light spills from the fissures, blinding and cold, illuminating the endless void beyond. I stagger backward, or at least what's left of me does. My legs buckle under the weight of the transformation, and I collapse onto the jagged ground. My vision blurs, colors bleeding together into a kaleidoscope of chaos. But even through the haze, I see it clearly. The figure stepping forward, its tentacles spreading wide, embracing the darkness around it. It's not bound by physical laws. It exists simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Its presence felt rather than seen. And as it moves, the whispers return, louder than ever, overlapping in a symphony of madness. Ezra, it says, though the voice isn't external. It resonates within me, reverberating through the remnants of my soul. You have served your purpose. Served? The word cuts through me, sharp and final. All this pain, all this suffering, for what? To awaken a god? To unleash destruction? Was I ever truly chosen, or was I simply convenient? The questions swirl in my mind, unanswered, as the entity continues its advance. It doesn't speak again, but its intent is clear. Earth awaits. Humanity awaits. Oblivion awaits. But there's one thing I still hold on to. One fragile shard of defiance buried deep within the ruins of my mind. If I am to be consumed, if I am to become nothing more than a vessel for annihilation, then I will fight until the very end. Not for myself, for them. For the people back on Earth who never asked for this, who never deserved it. For my mother, whose pride would turn to grief if she knew what I've become. For the 5 men who came before me, sacrificed without warning or consent. Summoning the last dregs of strength, I reach for the communicator strapped to my wrist. It's damaged, sparking erratically, but it's still functional. Barely. With trembling hands, I activate the emergency channel, broadcasting blindly into the void. "This is Ezra Thorne," I rasp, my voice barely audible over the cacophony of whispers. "If anyone can hear me, stop it. Destroy the signal. Sever the connection. Whatever you do, don't let it reach Earth." The transmission cuts off mid-sentence, drowned out by static. Whether it reaches anyone, I'll never know, but the effort costs me dearly. The entity reacts instantly, its gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that threatens to obliterate what little remains of my sanity. Pain floods my body, overwhelming and unrelenting, as the final stages of the transformation take hold. My skin splits apart, exposing the pulsating mass beneath. My limbs twist and contort, reshaping themselves into something alien, something monstrous. And finally, my face, the last vestige of my humanity, dissolves completely, consumed by the void. When it's done, I am no longer Ezra Thorne. I am something else entirely. A fragment of the entity's consciousness, a tool forged for destruction. My awareness expands, stretching across the lunar surface, reaching toward the distant blue orb hanging in the sky. Earth. Home. Target. The journey begins. Back on Earth, a scientist sits alone in a dimly lit control room, staring at a screen, displaying fragmented data from the lunar mission. Static crackles intermittently, broken only by a faint, distorted voice. "Whatever you do, don't let it reach Earth." She leans closer, her heart pounding, as the transmission ends abruptly. Before she can react, the monitors flicker, and a new signal appears, stronger, clearer. It's coming from the moon. Her fingers hover over the keyboard, trembling. Delete the data? Shut down the system? Or investigate further? Behind her, the lights dim suddenly, casting long shadows across the walls. A low hum fills the room, growing, louder with each passing second. She turns slowly, her breath catching in her throat, as the outline of a towering figure materializes in the corner of the room. Its eyes, black voids filled with galaxies, lock onto hers. And then, it speaks. "Awaken."